On this episode of Cork Soakers.
I will turn TCA in to a good buzz.
THC.
They call that disaster pants.
Disaster. Why, hello there. Welcome to the 8th installment of Cellarats and Decelerettes. I'm Jesse Inman.
I'm Aaron Inman, and I'd like to rule the world.
Megalomaniac much? Today we're going to talk about closures.
Jesse has none in his life,
But I do like closures.
and he talks about it a lot. If you've watched all of our previous 7 episodes, you'd notice that Jesse likes to go into a little bit of detail on closures, corks, screw caps on every single episode. Well, today, we're going to go in a little more in depth.
Let's go!
So today's concept is simple. We're going to try 3 wines. Each of them has a different closure. We're going to do a screw cap, we're going to do a glass stopper, and we're going to do a traditional cork.
We're also going to talk about the alternative closures to the ones we're tasting. There is a lot of closures. We're going to cover most of them. They all have their pluses and minuses.
And to be honest, there's a lot of misconceptions about closures in wine. Because when I was younger, I used to think that high quality wine had to come in a cork, a traditional cork. And I think we've since dispelled that, especially since Lucky Rock uses screw cap.
Primarily screw cap, that's right.
So we're gonna kick off this tasting and talk on closures with a Provençal Rosé from Gerard Croissant.
Sacré bleu! When I saw Aaron taking this off earlier, made me think they can be very hard to take off at first. I'm actually missing part of my tooth because I tried to use my tooth, and I would not recommend that.
That's because we're from Siskiyou County.
That's right. And so you also might notice this has cellophane that holds the glass stopper in. So glass stoppers typically don't allow any oxygen, although they're only as good as the O-ring.
Similar to people.
They can fail, they can be misaligned, or they can have cracks in them. And
They call that disaster pants.
disaster pants. And so that'll just hyperage your wine. It'll brown early, it'll lose all its fruit. But they click in and you can keep them for vinegar bottles or...
Yeah, they're aesthetically kind of cool.
they're kind of cool.
They're more popular in Europe than they are in the States. You see it in Germany, Austria, places like that. There's not a lot of wineries doing it here. It's kind of a novelty. There's pros and cons.
And you'll normally only see them in a white wine because they want to maintain freshness. There's, to the best of my knowledge, less oxygen exposure. But again, only as good as the O-ring.
Yeah, only about 95% of wines are meant to be consumed straight away. I mean, it's really only that 5% that needs long-term aging. Yeah. And you're going to want a little bit more oxygen to get into your wine than this will probably allow.
Yeah, and this is, it's branding. It looks good. Use it.
As you saw in our last episode, Post Malone was doing it, so you know it's cool.
Dope. So when it comes to the branding of this bottle, I'd pick it up if I was in the shop. I'd especially pick it up, not to be sexist, but if I was a woman.
For my lady!
Yeah. It's got a rose on the bottom, which is kind of cool.
I got a rose right there.
$15,000 at minimum for your own mold if you want to have a specialty mold made.
Yeah, Jesse hit it on the head. They're not really marketing to us, so we're not really the demographic they're shooting for, but yeah, it's a clean package.
Yeah.
So for tasting number 2, we are going to try a wine that is from a cork. And there's several different types of cork. When you say cork, Jesse's gonna go a little bit more into that. Today we're tasting Lotus, our friend Lindsay Otis's new release wine, Grenache. It's lovely.
It's not an expensive wine, it's not inexpensive wine, but I think it's meant to be drank a little earlier than some bigger wines. And so she's chosen to put a 1+1 or a conglomerated cork in it. It's less expensive because you're able to take all the pieces from the cork bark that you're not gonna use, and you can grind those up. You can basically sanitize them, kill any mold that might be in there. And then you glue them back together. And then what they do is they put a disc of natural solid cork on the top and bottom, because that lowers the incidence of corked wine as well. And corked wine is basically just cork that has a mold. A lot of people think it's cork like something's wrong with the cork. There is, but it's not aesthetic. It's inside the cork. There's a small beast of a mold that'll take chlorine and turn it into TCA, trichloroanisole, and just a 1 part per billion will ruin your wine.
Kind of like I will turn TCA in to a good buzz. So for tasting and talk number 3, we're gonna focus on the screw cap. And we're gonna taste a wine from Willamette Valley from Chehalem Vineyards. It's a very tasty pioneer up there in Willamette Valley, Oregon.
Tasty pioneer, huh?
So screw caps, the adoption curve of screw caps are this. They tried to introduce them in the 80s. People didn't like them. They're like cheap wine, doesn't make any sense. Wine's supposed to have a cork
Yeah.
or be in a Carlos Rossi jug. The Australian said, hold up, we're going to keep rocking this.
Good technology, we're all in.
And eventually, fast forward to now, you've got almost all New Zealand wines, almost all, minus a few like Grange and super high-end Australian wines are under screw cap, and they're totally acceptable. In the US, we've really accepted them more on the white wine and like quick to drink reds, a little less on the high end. Yeah, the Chehalem was actually, it's like a $50 bottle of
Yeah,
Pinot.
that's what we picked this one because we're like, hey, what's a brand that's producing a screw cap that's higher end? What does it taste like? Is it any different than a cork per se? To get a little technical, the Australians created what's called BVS. This is the finish on it, the screw cap part. But inside, there's also filaments. You'll always notice there's a white or silver disc inside. That white or silver disc allows more or less oxygen in. And so if you have a stinky fermentation, it's during the reduce, you got to be very careful putting one of these in your screw cap because it lets almost no oxygen in. And no oxygen means your wine will reduce even further, start to smell like onions and garlic.
And that's one of the negatives of a screw cap is it can have what's called reduction. Basically, it's a little bit of a stinky aroma that does blow off. If you're a consumer out there and you get a stinky wine, sometimes just give it a few, 10, 15 minutes. A lot of that will blow off. All that ease of the screw cap, that's one of the reasons we picked it at Lucky Rock, is we wanted you to be able to open that thing on your hike, on your picnic, at home. The ease is awesome, but you do have to watch that reduction a little
Yeah,
bit.
and you have to be careful in your winemaking. When you're bottling, you have to usually put either argon or nitrogen in the top. What we do with Lucky Rock is we put a liquid nitrogen drop. So you'll see sometimes in our social media, I'll post pictures of, looks like dry ice or something coming out of the top of the bottle. And that's to keep the oxygen out where you put the cap on because you cannot do a vacuum like you would with a seal.
I did a little nitrogen drip before this episode. For us, the biggest thing I get to reiterate is the ease. It's so easy to just take that off and access your wine. You don't have to deal with any TCA. That's also a major part of it, that you do run that with cork a little bit.
Yeah. The failure rate on a cork versus a screw cap is way higher.
And so, to reiterate, screw cap, easy to open, no TCA, maybe a little bit of reduction. Got to watch your winemaking. Certain varietals are a little more reductive than others. Maybe not as many high-end people in the US are using them on their wines, but I think that trend is going away as consumers get more familiar with them, as people start to find out the benefits of them. I don't necessarily put us on the poster for screw caps. We think they're great. They're a good tool, but cork is cool too.
Yeah.
So today we've mainly talked about 3 different types of closures, wine closures. We've talked about cork in its different forms. We've talked about screw caps in its different liners, and we've talked about glass stoppers. Now there's a few other types of alternative closures that Jesse's going to tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I just bought this one yesterday from a friend, and they put a crown top on it. You could very easily put a champagne cork in it, which is basically a conglomerate cork that's a little bit bigger and it can withstand a little bit more pressure. You put a champagne cork in it looks like a regular cork. It's pinched right here, and so that balloons out of.
It actually shrinks in about 12 millimeters.
It's pretty
to be able
crazy.
to hold that pressure.
And this glass is extra thick, so it can hold all that pressure.
It's kind of synthetic plastic corks.
You gotta be really careful with synthetic corks because they can be very porous, lots of holes in them, and so that means lots of oxygen. Lots of oxygen means your wine gets burned out really fast.
So today we talked about wine closures, maybe a little bit of a dry topic, but I think we spiced it up a little bit.
Or maybe we didn't. Thank you very much for joining us.
See ya on the next episode.